Hi, I'm Kim Brown. Glad you could join me today. And with us also today is Becky Buckman, a life empowerment coach in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome, Becky.
Thanks so much, Kim. I really appreciate you inviting me to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you could be here. Becky, tell us what exactly is a life emotional empowerment coach?
It, Technically, it's also a holistic approach as well. So it's taken the client's life, all areas of it, past, present, and future, emotional, spiritual, physical, all pieces of it, and breaking it down to look at what areas have sort of stuck programming, what has patterns in it that people want to break down. So the empowerment comes from finding those negative pieces and starting to dismantle them so that can be reprogrammed. So it's about finding all those areas, and the emotional piece typically is the piece that either we don't realize has a very has the key, holds the key to change in everything, because the emotions have a vibration to them. It has drivers to them, has strong imprints to them, kind of a stamp on how we filter our entire world and our perceptions. So the reason I added the emotional empowerment to it, not just life as in all these other pieces, I want to change my career, or I want to work on, family and relationships, but the whole entire piece is because the emotional piece is the thread that runs all through that. So getting the empowerment from changing the keys that are there, or whatever patterns are there, allows us to use that as our projection in all areas of our life, because it all comes from our filters and everything. It's coming from the inside out. That's the short answer.
Yeah. So most people want a short answer, don't they? They want you to get in there, fix it, Becky, fix me.
Well, yeah. Can you help me with this? Well, how long has it been bothering you? Oh, all my life. Okay, but it'll take more than 2 sessions. Yeah, exactly. And it becomes a part of that identity, which a lot of us don't realize, that we all have these, especially by the time we're 30 years old, this piece or pieces of our identity, the ego, that it just wants to run automatically, because the brain just wants to keep learning. So it generalizes and makes patterns so that it can run faster and efficiently, and the neocortex can move on and learn, but it's still going to we have our own Wikipedia. What I tell people, you have your own Wikipedia that you created, and it's what you Google through, or your brain Googles through, even to predict how an event is going to turn out, or how our conversation is going to go. So if somebody can't ask for a raise, they're like, oh, I need a raise. I've been working for the same employer for 10 years, and he's never given me a raise. Well, he's not going to, at this point. What would make you think he's suddenly going to, just surprise after 10 years? But how to ask for that? What's blocking you, or move on to another employer?
Mm-hmm.
So
you mentioned, I noticed on one of your posts that we are all homeschooled. Now, I homeschooled my children. So I would like for you to elaborate on that. How are we all homeschooled? I think it's fascinating.
Well, it's kind of like that, creating our own Wikipedia. That is, as soon as we're born, we don't even have an analytical mind at all. We're totally subconscious, and we have to start making meaning out of what all our experiences are. The sound of our mother's voice, the the look on our fathers or whoever the adults are that are around us and raising us, that smell, that, and we start making meaning out of things. Well, if our mother is afraid of spiders and she sees this thing crawling, her reaction, we make meaning out of that. Those little bitty crawly things are dangerous. Beware. So that's homeschooling. That's learning, because we're always learning. The brain is always learning, and it's about meaning. So that Wikipedia, those are our definitions that we wrote in there. And I think the one thing we have the hardest learning is that we can edit our own Wikipedia. That we can go in and change it. We're the original writers and creators of it. And that's the empowerment piece too, because that goes back to us being like, okay, it's not about what they did to us. My mother screamed at a spider, and I just totally made that up. She didn't like mice so much, but taking that as an example that, okay, I'm going to give that meaning. That little creepy thing is dangerous. It's harmful in some way. Beware. That when we become adults, and let's say I get to be in my 20s and I'm in college, and and I'm controlled by there can't be spiders, I don't even have any other imprint of a bad spider attack or or a bite or anything like that, other than this imprint of my mother's reaction and the meaning I gave it, which who knows where she got it, unless there's I do a questionnaire. Well, Mom, what was the first time that you knew you were afraid of spiders? So that homeschooling is referring to making meaning and the learning that we do about our environment and our place in the environment. I came up kind of with that phrase while I was teaching at the men's prison, because they have so many, well, we all have, all of us, they're not any different. But the abilities, the capabilities we think we have because of the meanings and surroundings and the environment that we grew up in. We didn't consciously choose, well, I want a mother who is afraid of spiders, and stays at home and, plays bingo every Saturday night. But it's up to us as adults to learn how we can look at our meaning, look at how we filter through about our outside world and the perceptions that we're using from the inside, and that we can start making those edits and changes. And many of them are difficult until we find the right questions to ask, whether somebody else asks them to us or we do self-inquiry, asking ourselves, where did that come from? Or instead of why.
Yeah.
Instead of why. Because that just goes in a whole nother, that gets up into the analytical mind and will just keep us busy. It doesn't do the healing work.
Right.
So.
And it tends to be more of a reflection back on us, though, isn't it? Why am I broken? Why does this always happen to me? Why am I always left out, or always whatever? That what am I believing here? What happens right before this? What choice can I make different, maybe? And you said that we can actually edit our own Wikipedia, and I don't think the majority of us know that. Our beliefs are true. That is the end, period, ... There is no more.
Right. And don't ask me to change them because I'm very attached to them.
Yeah. But we can change our beliefs
Absolutely.
because,
I used to believe in Santa Claus, hello, Tooth Fairy, right? I mean, those were beliefs and they meant something to us.
yeah.
I think kids now get about $5 under their pillow for their tooth. I'm not sure anymore.
Jerking.
Yeah. Has to be the baby teeth though.
Uh,
Um, but that it put an emotional piece on an event, losing your teeth and which could be painful or traumatic, depending on how the parents come at it.
mhm.
Um, and for me as a kid, it was a quarter, and there was a part of me after a while, after the second or third tooth, that knew that there wasn't a fairy flying in. But that then finally letting go of that belief, Santa Claus, the same way. Um, we think of those as childhood beliefs and we grow out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an editing process. Sometimes our beliefs we can't help but change because something big happens in our lives. We find ourselves in, whether it's an accident or something like that, where we're forced to look at, what's possible. But I think in general that our day-to-day, patterns and our day-to-day events, even the variations of patterns, that this is kind of similar this way. It can be in relationships, it can be in money, it can be in, all these other arenas where it's expressed, and seeing that and what is the common denominator?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, me. So when did that first factor in? When was the first occasion of that? When have I felt that way before or experienced something like it before? And personally, I've found what I call themes that were threaded through, not necessarily the emotions at first that kind of led me to believe that, speaking in finances, for example, that there was this, and I realized that as I looked at different events that went way back into grade school, that there were themes of things being stolen from me or taken from me or me leaving them behind. Mostly things being, little things being taken from my desk from another, student, or,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized that I carried some belief into adulthood about, things being taken from me, and or cheated. The other piece that all kind of packed into this little package it was about lost, stolen, or cheated. And it was like, oh, there's a nice little, this will keep me busy cleaning this up for a
Yeah.
while, editing. And that's where the editing comes in. That, okay, these events that are linked together with one of these themes or the feelings around these themes, then I can start edit them, and using tapping as my main tool to do that, get the emotion out of the way, start reframing it. And I was thinking about this morning. What is the biggest question that I ask myself or clients? Is this now something you would give to somebody else?
Oh.
This, if you have a childhood of being, cheated on or taken from or losing things. Because a lot of clients will say, well, I want to keep this story.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep this story because it made me who I am today. I am a survivor. I've conquered. I've, like this warrior. Okay, you can keep your warrior, all this confidence that you've built But do you have to have these experiences over here to get this? Because if it's not something you would give to somebody else, this is my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If those experiences are not something that you would give to somebody else, then there's a piece of either a martyrdom or victimhood or something that makes me a survivor. And that's not necessary. I don't believe, people can, all of us, any of us, anyone can become confident, strong, capable, powerful, empowered without having a traumatic, horrible experiences, victim experiences. They'll always, if somebody has suffered through those at some time in life, there will always be an element that will know that.
Mm-hmm.
I tell clients, we're not going to jump into a time machine and actually go into the past or into another dimension. But the way it's written in your mind is, so if you're claiming that, well, I want to keep that story because it makes me who I am today. Well, keep all the parts that you are today and move into the future with those wonderful parts, but don't drag the story along with you of all that you had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
You can edit that and make the feelings of being loved and cherished and treasured as a young person will actually strengthen this future empowered person, confident and strong, because you have more resources.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now let's say there's a person who has not had an abusive or traumatic past, but maybe they just procrastinate, or maybe they don't feel that great all the time, but they feel guilty about that because they didn't have this traumatic, horrible past. Can tapping or any of these mind-changing concepts help them at all?
Well, absolutely. I think it's all about finding what you want to change for yourself. If it's procrastination, okay. If it's horrible chronic pain, that's something different, but it's still changing how it's linked and programmed into the mind. So if you have a phone, an old smartphone, you got an iPhone 4, that works fine. My husband has the old flip phone. He doesn't even have a smartphone, but he makes phone calls on it and he's fine with that. He doesn't see any need to change. But if you have a phone that needs upgrading because of all the things you want to do, then you can't keep applying apps like, oh, this new app came out that'll do this, and and this is a great app for productivity, and this is a great app for staying connected, and this is a great app, and you start loading them up. Even an iPhone 4 is finally going to crap out.
Mm-hmm.
The apps and the operating system don't match. So the operating system has to be upgraded. So it's again looking for patterns that we want to break, because I don't have a big history of huge traumatic experiences to me, but that didn't change the fact that I had, yo-yo dieting, so the whole, self-esteem around how I looked, how much I weighed. Oh my gosh, obsessed with weighing myself every day, because I grew up with a mother and sisters who did the same thing. So I learned, a general, which a lot of society, or at least in the Western society, is about how women are supposed to be or how they're supposed to look. Also, my mother, was a housewife. My dad worked, blue collar worker. My mom was, home, raising kids, fixing lunches for everybody, house with 9 people and 1 bathroom. So there was social skills learned, sharing. I didn't have a bedroom to myself, until I was in junior high, I think. So, I had still learnings that didn't always serve me. But if I think they're normal, and then I meet somebody who didn't, they were an only child and they had all this attention and, just different things. I mean, we could come up with an infinite amount of scenarios.
Certainly.
But the example is that it doesn't have to be, that it was a life-threatening trauma or years of physical abuse, or it doesn't have to be a story like that to know that we still have to do some self-inquiry and take ownership as adults. How can I change this? And what can I change on my own? And where do I need help with it? Because if I'm too identified with it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like asking me to remove, a couple of my fingers.
Right.
Well, no, actually I need them and I'm pretty attached to them. But because that can be what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
What? You want me to shed my skin? This is the same skin I've been wearing all my life. That other skin is going to be very uncomfortable and unfamiliar.
Yes.
But it's just looking at patterns, so even those who had, I've known clients who've said, I had a charmed life. I don't have any reason to complain, but for some reason I feel really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, then, well, it was the death of her infant sister. That she was sick. She had nothing to do with it, but the reaction of her parents and the whole family dynamic, she was still carrying sadness, she's in her 60s.
Mm.
And had no conscious clue that it was connected. She's like, I have a wonderful husband, I got kids, but I've just have felt this sadness, this deep
Mm-hmm.
sadness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Becky, if someone wants to take control, they want to become empowered, what do you have that you can offer local people or people all over the world? What do you got going on?
What do I have? A lot of questions, first of all. Well, I mean, the encouragement that anybody can do this. I believe it's finding the key. We all hold the keys.
Yes.
For our change. And taking those keys and becoming the driver. Because the keys are being held by the subconscious. So what do I have is that knowing that you are just as powerful as me. It doesn't matter what our stories are. It doesn't matter how we interpreted the experiences that we've had in the past. It doesn't matter where we want to go, that all things are possible.
Mm.
And if you have a dream, an idea about it, or an inkling, or a craving, or a desire, that those are not there by accident. That those are there because they're absolutely possible. And the only thing that gets in the way is some limiting belief about it. Or 15. But it's just finding those and making the commitment. I mean, successful people, some of them have horrible stories, but they become successful through the commitment, loving yourself exactly as you are in this moment, whereas truly where our power is. It's the only moment that actually exists, and that's where all of our power is, and that's where all possibilities are. So continue believing that. Have a support group. And I don't mean like that you meet on Saturday mornings, but I mean a support system that reminds you that, you were born into this world with all possibilities, with the ability to do anything. And the limiting beliefs are things that we learned as well, and they can be unlearned. But we have to own them and then rewrite them, edit them, change them, and make sure that there's something we would give to somebody else. And even just that feeling, this is something that I would give to my granddaughter. This is something that I would give to my niece. This experience, this feeling. Okay, then give it to yourself. Yeah.
So your YouTube channel is called Untangle the Knots. So are these the knots you're helping people untangle?
Right. The NOTS, those limited beliefs that I can't do that, or, that's not going to happen kind of thing. And listening to that and unraveling, untangling, because the more knots we have, the rougher our ride, and as we untangle those. And it's kind of like if you've ever had a necklace that got tangled up, and it's like, oh, this can be, and you get one piece and you think you got it, but it pulls another piece, and consciously it's just a loop. It's just this one piece, but it's somehow gotten wadded up and tangled up. And when we finally get something to come loose in one area, to come loose, and it can take a lot of patience and, a lot of stopping and breathing and inviting, work with me here, rather than, this is impossible. When that knot starts getting smaller, then you can see how this piece was wrapped through this loop, and how and then those last pieces come, and it's just like, and this thing that was wadded up to be this big is this smooth, laid out. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it's it looks like one knot. It's got all these other smaller ones just looped through and wrapped around. You see, all my descriptions are like this.
Well, that is life, isn't it? It's all wound in there together.
And it can be a beautiful, ball of yarn. But it still has to serve us. It still has to support us, because the universe supports us. Whether you call that God, or whether you call it Jesus, or whether you call it Buddha, or whatever, it's still something bigger that supports us. That's why I said, if there's a dream or a desire or an idea, it's not there by accident.
Well, Becky, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm going to have all Becky's information at the end of this interview. She's got courses. Can you spare some change? Is that right?
Yeah, I just finished that course. That's a local course. Someday it'll be online, but right now it's a local class. Yeah.
She has an e-note that you send out every week, right?
Every Sunday. It's very short. That's why it's an e-note. A couple paragraphs, a picture. Move on with your day.
The YouTube channel, the Untangle the Knots. You have a website.
My website, yeah, BeckyBuckman.com. And I even have a deck of cards.
Oh, that's right.
So if you're stuck in your knot, you're stuck in your knot and you can't seem to pull yourself out, then the deck of cards, I call a deck of defracts, which means defractionate that whole pattern that's going, and it to help bring you out of it. It's either got a question on it or something to do, something silly, usually that'll
quack like a duck.
Yeah, even better than that. fart like a robot, something like that.
Something to make you really think, huh? How would that be?
Yeah, you're thinking about that, aren't you?
Well, if you want a fun session, I would say get in touch with Becky for sure. She'll help you.
Always full of surprises. That's right. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Becky. And we thank all of you for watching today. And remember, no matter what you've experienced in the past, today is a new day. See you next time.